Hi, it's Laura with Following the Paper Trail, and I am doing the 12 projects of Christmas once again. It's been many years since I've done that, and so I'm excited to be back doing it again. For this first project, I am going to be showing you a binding that's a modification or a variation of one that is very near and dear to me. 5 years ago today, I introduced this little Stack the Deck album here on YouTube. It's gotten like close to 200,000 views since then. People have been using this binding now for those 5 years. I'm so excited that people have received this binding so well. As always, I think it's important to share things like how to do some of these bindings so that you can do your own. Feel free to use it, that sort of thing. I'm just excited to share with you. But since this Stack the Deck binding 5 years ago, I've developed many other bindings. They're all variations on stuff that's been around for centuries. With this one, this actually came from some other bindings that I've been doing recently that I use fabric in them. People have expressed a lot of concern about the durability of cardstock hinged bindings, and they've added other materials, made them out of materials. Some are easy to work with, some are difficult. But coming from a quilting background, I have fabric on hand, and it's something that I know is strong and durable and flexible. So with this Stack the Deck with fabric or fabric wings, it gives you that durability that a lot of people are looking for because of cardstock hinge that's folding back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It has the potential to finally fail if an album is getting a lot of activity, let's put it that way. I have had albums at CHA or in stores as samples that get a ton of abuse, and I've never had one rip or fail. But if you have, you put so much work into it, you don't want that happening. I have found using fabric as the attachment wings or fins, as I have called them as well, solves that problem of durability. It's not going to tear, it's not going to rip. It's easy to work with. I use score tape on it. I use glue on it. Both work equally well. With score tape or red tape, any of the really super strong adhesives, you're not going to want to use a tape runner or an ATG. It just doesn't have the strength. But you want to use something that's really strong. And if you hit it with a heat gun after you've got it all installed, warm it up, give it a little burnish, it's like it melds into the fabric. And so it works really well. You can also use glue. Now I just use my Scotch adhesives, the new one. The Quick Dry has become tacky, permanent tacky glue. Same formula, same stuff. Or you can use fabric tack. It's a glue designed specifically for fabric. I have no problems with either the Quick Dry or the fabric tack. Either one, it just depends on your own personal preference. But either glue or strong adhesive, whether it's attaching these or any of that, that's what you're going to need to use with this. So this stacks in layers the same as Stack the Deck, the original Stack the Deck does. The difference is that you're going to have the channels or the spaces between the pages are cut out of cardstock, and they don't have the wings attached because we're going to be putting those on with fabric. So you can make it with those channels being, the original Stack the Deck had 1/4 inch channels. I remember worrying about that for days as just to how much space, because prior to Stack the Deck I was doing individual channels, and I just remember deciding forever, because prior to this a lot of people were doing things where there was no gap at all. And so everybody's books would go like this. If this is the binding down here where my wrists are, everybody's books would fan out, or they were using rings. So, and I settled on the 1/4 inch. nowadays we're doing so many flip out pages and pockets and all sorts of extras. 1/4 inch might not be enough. So I'm also giving you dimensions for a 3/8 gap between the pages or a 1/2 inch gap if you like to do really chunky pages. Now I do have a download, excuse me, I do have a download PDF over on my website, and I'll put the link down below in the information for this video so that you can download all of the cutting dimensions. So I'm giving them out here in the video. You can download that sheet. It'll give you the cardstock cutting, the fabric cutting, and then also the spine width. Now this this little book, blank book that I have that I'm in assembly of has also a fabric covered spine. I've been using this for a couple years now on my Ustream shows. It eliminates that problem of the cracking. I also will link to my video from my website of how to do the fabric covered spine. So I'm not going over that here in this video. So you can go watch that video there. As I said, it's over on my website. There's a link for it. How this is all goes together is that it has the cardstock. So this is essentially just like Stack the Deck. It's like I trimmed the wings off. So this is the center channel, and then the second channel is 3 times the width of the center, and the last channel is 5 times the width, so that they can all stack and each of the spaces is the same as the center. So if this was 1/4, these would all be 1/4, 3/8, or 1/2, so they would all spread out and be equal distance. So with the 3/8, the center one is going to be 3/8, the middle is 1 1/8, and the widest is 1 7/8. If you're doing the 1/4 inch, it's going to be a 1/4 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and 1 1/4 for the widest. And for the Chunky Monkey at 1/2 inch, it's going to be 1/2 inch, 1 1/2 inches, and 2 1/2 inches. So that's what your cardstock is cut widthwise. Height-wise, it's determined by how tall you want your album to be. The cardstock is cut to the height of your covers. The fabric is cut to the height of your pages, less about 1/8 of an inch. I like to take about 1/8 of an inch off in order to make it easier to slip the pages on, and you'll be doing pages that will be able to attach to each side of the fabric, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes how they attach on. So your height is the height of your, as shown in this one, the height of the cardstock is the same height as your covers, and the fabric is the same height as my pages. So if I were doing, oh, that one's not cut yet, an envelope page. So I've just taken an envelope or any kind of tube-based page that you want to create. All of my turn the page pages would work with this binding. If I can get this to slip over. Of course, it slips over when nobody's watching, but as soon as I put it on video, it wants to not slip on. So it just slips right over. And the beauty is the fabric is very flexible, and so it allows the pages to move freely. And I'll talk a little bit more about putting that on, but if it's slightly narrower, the page slips on a whole lot easier. So you're going to cut your 3 levels. I like to do 3 levels and 6 pages. Anything more than that, it just becomes really awkwardly wide, and in my opinion looks a little wonky when it's so wide. So I tend to make albums that have 5 to 6 pages. If I need more than that, I either make a larger album or I make multiple albums. But when you start getting like 5 and 6 inch spines on them, they visually look a little odd. So I tend to like to do just 3 levels. So we'll cut our 3 levels of cardstock to the height of our covers as determined by what pages we're using. So then you're going to have a wider section of fabric for the center, because it is going to fold over and meet in the middle, and then this cardstock will go over it. The remaining 4 fabric wings that go on the 2nd and 3rd level are all the same width. These are all an 1.5 inches, because they're going to attach onto the back side. I've got 1/4 inch score tape so that it overlaps onto the back side by 1/4 inch on the second and third levels, so they can all be the same width. Because this varies whether you're doing a 3/8, a 1/4, or a 1/2 inch, in order to have a 1/2 inch wing hanging out, this width is different. So for a 1/4 inch, your fabric, center fabric, for the 1/4 inch size, it's a 2.5 inch wide piece of fabric. For the 3/8, the center fabric width is 2 3/4, and for the 1/2 inch, it's 3 inch. All of this information, is on that download that you can get off of my website. It's under the archives button under pattern downloads. So as I said, I'll have a link for you to follow. Okay, so to prep these, I'm going to take and put 1/2 inch tape, or if you don't have 1/2 inch, you can do like 2 rows of 1/4. And I'm going to just finger press this strip in half. So then I can peel off the paper backing if it wants to cooperate. There it goes. I've been having a devil of a time lately with the paper backing not wanting to peel off. Okay, so I'm going to fold it so that edge lines up with that center, and do the same thing with the other side to bring those two together at the center. So we've got our center where they're just butting up to each other. Give it a good finger press. Now I'm going to be then placing this on top of that seam. You can have the seam underneath or on top, either one, doesn't matter. And then we're going to attach that strip so that the fabric is centered on it. If it helps you to either mark it, or for instance here I'm placing it on my grid so I know how much to overhang it on each side, but you want it centered. So then you should have a 1/2 inch tab or fabric tab on each side of that. So on these wider ones, we're going to peel the backing off this 1/4, and I use 1/4 inch tape. So I'm going to take one of these guys, fold it in half so that the edges line up with each other. Let's do 2 of them. One for each side. Whoops. So this raw edge is going to align with the edge of the score tape. So it's kind of a cheater method of measuring, because I'm using this width of the score tape as my measure. You can also mark it if you want to. So again, just like we did with this one, I'm centering it so I have equal distance top and bottom. Same with the other. The raw edge is underneath, the fold is exposed. So we have the fold and the fold. We'll do the last set. And so the same thing on the back of this one. And again, center it. Now, you can mark it. I'm pretty good at eyeballing it after years of doing this. So now I'm ready to stack the deck again. So on this back side here, I'm going to run my score tape on the back of the fabric section. I've already got the tape on the cardstock sections. So then I can stack this one on top. So I center my cardstock. So then that gives me my channel and my flap on each side. So then I go ahead and on this back side, cover again at the fabric section. If you're using a narrower score tape, you'll want it to cover as much of the back surface area as you can, because this is what's holding it all together. So then we'll stick this guy, and again, centering the cardstock on the front side. Almost did it, goofed it up there. Centers back there too. So it's centered and stacked, and then we've got these nice clean, you can finger fold those back on themselves, get them to pop up a little bit. So then you can go ahead and add adhesive over the entire back of this piece, so that then, just like I did here, you can attach it down, and it becomes nice and clean when this is the same height as our cover, so it's nice and clean underneath. You could do this with pattern paper if you choose to. I just want to make sure it was cardstock weight rather than paper weight, but so you could use a pattern paper and the pages will seem to be kind of floating. On terms of the fabric that I use, I was a quilter before I went into paper crafting, and so I have a lot of fabrics. The fabrics that I use many times are what are called batiks, B-A-T-I-K-S. They use, in general, most batiks use a pretty high thread count, very densely woven fabric. And so you're looking for a woven, preferably cotton fabric. Polyesters, if you use any sort of heat techniques on your albums, when it's attached, could melt. You don't want to use anything that's knit or stretchy. So you want to stick with a nice densely woven fabric. Most quilt fabrics are going to work great, and you can coordinate prints or solids with your project. And that's where it's fun to make your binding and your spine fabric potentially match. In my kits, I include fabric in them, so you can do a fabric binding and a fabric spine if you want to do that. When you're attaching your pages, I left this one attached on here, you want to allow about an 1/8 inch gap when you're attaching it. And I do tend to attach my pages with glue. It gives you that opportunity to wiggle things around, move them just a little before it has to set into place. When you're using a score tape or something like that, unless you're really good at it, it does tend to grab and stick really quickly. So you want to use glue when you're attaching these. And again, I just use my Scotch adhesives, but you could use any of your preferred glues, or if you prefer, a fabric tack will work as well. But allowing that 1/8 inch gaps allows that for the flexibility of the fabric, and it just, everything just kind of lays flat and really nice, and it then takes advantage of the strength also of the fabric. With you could add paper bags, or any paper bags if you take and fold the bottom down, and so you've got the kind of alligator lips there. You can attach that on in the same way, again allowing that 1/8 of an inch, and so the fabric is then sandwiched in between. If you want to combine different page sizes, you can also make the fabric different heights depending on what you want to do in terms of your pages. let's see. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to show you with this Stack the Deck with fabric wings. Again, there is a downloadable sheet on my website that will give you all the cutting for the cardstock, the fabric, and the spine width for whether you're using a 1/4 inch, a 3/8, or a 1/2 inch channel or gap then between your pages. So I'm excited to be doing the 12 projects of Christmas. They may be every day. They may have a day or two skip in there, but we'll get all 12 of them done about a week before Christmas. So anyway, hope you enjoy this Stack the Deck with fabric wings binding. Thanks a bunch.